So because I haven't gone away and done any extra research, if you guys know more than just what the documentary tells us, please let me know, because I need to know more if there's more to know. So, honestly, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Just when I think I've heard it all, another documentary comes along and blows my mind at how absolutely crazy people can be. Like, it's truly mind-blowing that there are people like this just like living among us. This documentary floored me. So, Maternal Instinct starts with body camera footage from police officers that have pulled over a woman driving really erratically and really, really fast. She was speeding past other drivers, going up onto the shoulder and just driving really recklessly. She'd come from Texas and crossed over state lines into Oklahoma. She'd even driven into a bird that got stuck on her front grille, which just goes to show how quickly she's driving, that this bird is still stuck on the front of her car. So the officers are after her for her dangerous driving. When they pull her over and go up to see who is in the car, they see a woman with a newborn baby in her lap. Like, literally just been born. And they're like, oh my gosh, what? And the woman is hysterical. She's crying, she's panicked, and obviously once the officer saw that she had a baby in her lap, he became alarmed as well. You could see the umbilical cord was tucked into her pajama bottoms, and she was telling the officer that she'd just given birth, like in the car, and that she was driving to the hospital where she was due to meet her fiance. And she was, like I said, absolutely hysterical, like panicked and just wanting to get to hospital. So of course the immediate assumption is this woman's just had a baby in her car unexpectedly on the way to the hospital. But the baby isn't breathing and she's frantically trying to perform CPR on the baby. So once the officers realise this, they're like, right, we need to get you and baby to hospital pronto. So 911 was already involved, an ambulance is on the way, and the entire scene is just really chaotic and kind of confusing, because the mum, whose name is Taylor, she's fully dressed in pyjamas, but there's a baby, an umbilical cord, and a placenta. So to anyone arriving at the scene, it would seem obvious that she just gave birth, because what else could have happened? But a lot of people felt like immediately it was odd that she even had pajama bottoms on, like if you've just given birth. I mean, I think most women in that situation, they're gonna be bottomless, right? It doesn't matter that you're heading to hospital. Like, I just don't think in that situation many people are gonna care that they're naked. Like, you've just had a baby and you're frantically trying to get to hospital. She also wasn't covered in blood, like you would assume. This scene did not look as if she had just birthed this baby in this car. And another thing people noticed is that Taylor didn't physically look like a woman who'd just given birth. She wasn't skinny, but she wasn't the physical size you would expect to see of a pregnant lady. So even though on first impressions it appears a woman's just given birth in her car, when you start to notice all these things obviously everyone's in a state of panic and confusion. They just want to get the baby to safety and get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. So they're taken to hospital, and when they get there, it becomes apparent that Taylor has not been truthful. First off, she just outright refused to be medically examined. It's like, you just had a baby. You need to be checked for hemorrhaging, for any injury to the area. Like, why are you refusing the doctor's help? You know, you've just had a baby by yourself, roadside. Surely you want someone to check you over. But she was having none of it. The baby, unfortunately, did not make it. Little baby girl lost her life. Eventually, after being spoken to for quite some time, medical experts convinced Taylor to undergo an examination. And what the doctor found was that there were absolutely no signs of Taylor having given birth or even been pregnant. There was no trauma to the area. And the doctor was like, she did not just have a baby, she's lying. So now the question became, where did this baby come from? How did Taylor end up with a newborn baby with its umbilical cord and placenta attached? Like, how did this happen? And not only that, why was Taylor continuing to insist that the baby belonged to her, that she was the one that had given birth, and just completely denying the medical evidence that was being presented to her? What was going on with Taylor? According to former friends of Taylor Parker's, which was her last name, she was someone who desperately craved attention, particularly male attention. It seemed like Taylor's self-worth was directly connected to the amount of male attention that she would receive, and it seemed like she was willing to do whatever it takes in order to get that type of validation. When she was young, she spent a lot of time talking to guys online, and in high school Taylor was slightly heavier. She held a bit more weight and was quite insecure about her body, so she wasn't receiving the type of attention that she craved. So she turned to online communications. Now, we're all familiar with the term catfishing. Taylor was a catfish. She would frequently ask her friends that she considered to be attractive and like physically fit if she could take pictures of them nude from the neck down, so not including their face, so that she could send these pictures to the guys she was talking to online, pretending it was her. Naturally, her friends were like, no, we're not doing that. And as you can imagine, these friendships began to fade, and it was hard for Taylor to maintain long-term close friendships. So that's the kind of behaviour she was doing at high school, and people often felt like Taylor lacked a sense of personal identity. It seemed as if she would kind of adopt other people's personalities around her, like trying to figure out if it was one that she liked or that it felt like her. She would observe other people's experiences and see how they felt, and if someone was going through a dramatic situation or a personal struggle, she often became deeply invested in that person and almost enmeshed herself with them, so it was like she was going through it too. After high school, Taylor underwent gastric bypass surgery and lost a significant amount of weight, and after this she developed guess, became more physically attractive to people as well, so I think she became more magnetic overall. She had more confidence, and so she made friends pretty easily. It was just keeping them that was the problem. As I said, she enmeshed herself with her friends to the point where she was quite clingy and be inappropriately close to someone, and that would eventually push people away from her. Another behaviour that people were suspicious of was that Taylor always seemed to have health issues going on. She was frequently ill and visited hospital quite often, but she posted photos of herself in hospital to like Facebook. Obviously, when you do that, people send you well wishes, sympathy, and I think that was another way of her trying to gain attention. At one point, she even claimed to have cancer. I don't think that's ever been confirmed. She had periods of depression, and there was just always something going on with Taylor. And initially, of course, her friends were very sympathetic and worried about her, but after a period of time, they felt like something's off here because Taylor's always sick, and it's not like a chronic health condition where you have something in particular and you're just sick for a long period of time. It was always something different. And so eventually it started to feel to people as if this was disingenuous and that she was just always having a problem that she wanted attention for or was seeking help for. And so people also distanced themselves from her for those reasons too. Now, Taylor did not have any medical issues. She did at one point have something quite drastic happen to her, and I'm sure if this happened to any woman, it would be very, very upsetting. She got married and had 2 children, and during her second pregnancy, she experienced significant complications that required surgery. And whilst the doctors were operating, they discovered she had multiple issues that involved her reproductive organs. She had suffered an ectopic pregnancy, which is very dangerous. It can end people's lives. They're a very scary thing to experience. And because of all the complications that they found whilst operating, they had to make a decision that she was not able to be a part of because she was under anaesthetic. And that was, they needed to perform a hysterectomy. Because she was unconscious, they consulted her husband at the time, and he ultimately gave the okay for her to have a hysterectomy, and I'm sure that was not an easy decision for him to make either. You know, I don't think any loving husband is gonna make a decision like that lightly. I think it was, like I say, an emergency situation. Her health was at risk, her life was at risk, and so they just had to do what was necessary. But obviously when Taylor woke up and learned that she could no longer have any more children, and that the ability to do so wasn't her choice to make, and someone else had made it for her, she was devastated. And honestly, I think most people would feel the same way. You know, if having children is something that you want and now you can't, that must feel awful. But at the same time, if it really was a state of emergency, you can understand why people had to make that choice. So Taylor had had this emergency hysterectomy, so when you go back to the fact that she's now in hospital with a baby and she's saying that it's hers, it's like, well, that's impossible for you. You have no uterus left. And apparently this wasn't the first time frequent story of Taylor's. But the problem was that all her close friends knew she'd had a hysterectomy, so Taylor started distancing herself from those friends. But they had already started pulling away from her too because of her odd behaviour, so to them it was kind of, I guess, a relief that she was pulling away. Just another bit of behaviour to note that happened within that friend group. One of the women was pregnant, and Taylor became overwhelmingly invested in this friend's pregnancy. At first, it just seemed like excitement for her friend, but it became quickly obvious that Taylor was becoming obsessive about her friend's pregnancy, to the point where she was insistent on attending all of her doctor's appointments with her. And bear in mind, this woman has a husband. She's got someone to do all of these things with. It's not like she's alone and needs someone with her. But Taylor insisted, and she even wanted her friend's medical portal login information so that she could keep track of what the doctors were saying about her pregnancy. And her fixation apparently became so intense that the friend finally reached a point where it weirded her out so much that she was just like, I am uncomfortable, you're being invasive, and she started to distance herself from Taylor. I don't blame her. So, now that Taylor's kind of pulled away from the friends and they've pulled away from her, Taylor went to a rodeo. I don't know if it was by herself, maybe with one other person, not too sure. But she went to a rodeo and met a guy called Wade Griffin, and they began seeing each other. But what's interesting is that the entire time they were together, which wasn't very long, he never told her that he loved her, and that's because I don't think he ever did. Even when it got to the point of her carrying his child, he never said, I love you. But Wade was the kind of person where he was very placid, like he wasn't one to cause a fuss, cause a scene. He wasn't really one to stand up for himself or like push back. He kind of just went with the flow, let life happen to him, and hoped that it would all work out. And at the same time, he was surrounded by people that genuinely believed the best about other people. They seemed like a very welcoming and warm family and friends they had, and so they just saw the best in everyone. So when he met Taylor, they were like, wow, she's really pretty, she's really friendly, because she was, and she seems like a really good, sweet girl, like she's perfect for you. And Wade was a hard-working man. He took care of his responsibilities, and like I said, he was very placid and not very outspoken. He just kind of goes with the flow. So he meets Taylor, and Taylor begins to see Wade as her future, her everything, and started to shape herself into whatever she believed Wade wanted in a girlfriend. Within only a month of dating, she told him that she needed to move in with him. And the reason she gave for this is that apparently her family, especially her mother, were absolutely terrible people. The way that Taylor describes her mum, you'd think that she was like the devil incarnate or something. And when Taylor told a story, she was so convincing that it left people feeling like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you've had to deal with all this from your family. We're so pleased that you managed to come out from under their thumb and escape their grasp, kind of thing. So Taylor's telling Wade this elaborate story, and alongside it she's telling him that she is due to come in this whole story, and Wade believes it, his family and friends believe it, and they feel sorry for her and want to help her out, so he kind of just accepts that she needs to move in. She appeared to speak regularly to an attorney. She had emails, voicemails, and other communications that appeared to come from lawyers about this trust money. So as far as everyone else understood, there were just a few legal hurdles that Taylor had to jump over, and then ultimately she would be getting her $8 million guaranteed, pretty much. And even though it seems like quite an elaborate story, like I said, she was very convincing, especially when you have all these voicemails, emails. Like, she supposedly had proof on her phone that she could show Wade and his family and friends that this was all legit. So because they thought this was all real, she started spending this money before she even had it. So she persuaded Wade to go and buy an $80,000 truck, as well as an expensive tractor. And she also purchased another vehicle for Wade's mum. There was also a piece of land called Pecan Point in Oklahoma that Wade had expressed interest in for many years. He thinks it's a beautiful piece of property, but it's worth millions, and he knows it's a pipe dream. He'll never be able to afford that property. It had a river running through it, a pecan orchard, and it was also a cattle ranch, and it was just stunning. So, with Taylor trying to be his perfect girl and essentially trying to win him and his family over, she decided to make an offer on Pecan Point on Wade's behalf. So she's making big financial moves. So of course the people around her are going to think this must be legit. There's no way it can't be. However, cracks soon begin to appear in her inheritance story, because only 3 weeks after buying the car for Wade's mum, the vehicle was repossessed because it hadn't been paid for, and they came to collect it, which of course immediately started ringing alarm bells for Wade's mum and some of the family members. They started to get suspicious about Taylor's financial claims, but whenever they expressed these concerns, Taylor seemed to have some kind of explanation. She'd say it was all to do with her mum. Her mum was interfering and causing all these problems for her because of how wretched she is. According to Taylor, the money had always been there, but her mum keeps blocking her from being able to access it, and that's supposedly why she couldn't pay for all of these things. And even though these excuses are pretty weak, the problem was that nobody could actually catch her out in this lie, and Taylor did not back down from a lie. Once she made a claim, she treated it as absolute truth. She would never admit to a lie. Instead, she would just reshape details or redirect the conversation, or just simply insist that the other people had misunderstood her, and would go on to say what she actually meant. So she worked relentlessly to make people believe anything she said. So, despite their suspicions to do with the financial side of things, because she kept explaining it away, they overlooked it, because aside from that, Taylor was the ideal partner for Wade. She was attractive, she looked after herself and dressed up well, but she was also really fun to be around, super easy to talk to, and she participated in all of the activities that Wade enjoyed, and she enjoyed it. It wasn't like she was doing it begrudgingly. So, for example, beside him in the tree stand, and she would go fishing with him. They'd wander through the woods and just do all these outdoor activities that would probably be considered kind of manly, but she was down. She was down to do anything with Wade. She was constantly by his side, and she really got in there and lived that outdoorsy lifestyle and seemed to enjoy herself at the same time. So when, she suggested about moving in, even though Wade thought it was a little fast, he didn't put up too much of a fuss about it because she seemed to be a great woman. She also was the kind of girl that was like keeping the house nice and had a hot meal for him every night when he came home from work, because he worked long hours. He worked at a roofing company during the day, and then as a side hustle he would go and hunt wild hogs and sell them to people, and she would even go along on these hunts with him. So he had a busy schedule and lots of responsibility, and I suppose having a woman around so you don't have to worry about feeding yourself or cleaning the house, and she comes out on these trips with you and enjoys it, even though he's not said I love you yet, it seems to be working. And Taylor was also very supportive of Wade's goals and dreams and interests, including that property at Pecan Point, and that's why she decided to put offers in on Wade's behalf, because she is trying her utmost to be Wade's perfect girl, but he's still kind of, I guess kind of cool with her. He's not said I love you, he's not overly affectionate, and it seems like Taylor just was trying everything she could to get him to fall head over heels for her, to the point where she was also almost becoming desperate for his affection, for his love, and that's when she decided to announce that she was pregnant, even though that's not possible because she's had a hysterectomy. And apparently this actually wasn't the first time that she told Wade she was pregnant. Earlier on in the relationship, I don't know how early, but it must have been really early, she had claimed to be carrying twins and then miscarried. Of course, Wade had no knowledge of the fact that Taylor had had a hysterectomy because he was not part of her life then, and he didn't know anyone that was part of her life at that time, so he had no way of knowing that she couldn't have children. Taylor had been very careful to keep her old life separate from her new life so that Wade couldn't find these things out about her. Now, Wade, as I said, he was a very busy guy. He worked a lot. He would go hunting for hogs, and she would go sometimes, but now she's pregnant, right? So she can't go all the time. And Taylor starts to feel lonely because, she's someone that thrives on attention, and she's not getting what she needs. So she starts working as a photographer. She photographed weddings, pregnancy announcements, anniversaries, graduations, all of those important life events, because it's a way for her to experience some kind of drama and integrate herself into it somehow, as she always likes to do. And she would try to make friends with all of these people. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but one client in particular did end up forming a very special friendship with her, and she was called Reagan Hancock, and she had hired Taylor to be her wedding photographer because Taylor was like a new photographer. Her cost was cheaper, and Reagan was on a budget. And so her heart went out to Taylor. You know, she's pregnant, and it sounds like her guy just isn't interested that much. And so after they've been talking at the wedding for a long period of time, Reagan says, look, you're welcome to stay for the after party, for the reception, if you would like to. And so she did, and they formed a friendship. Later, Reagan's mother explained that that's just simply who Reagan was. If she saw someone struggling or needed help, she wanted to be a supportive, good friend to them. So those two are now good friends. Now what's interesting is that she's obviously told Reagan that her relationship is difficult and emotionally challenging and lonely, and yet that's a very different story to one that she tries to paint on social media. So on her Facebook profile, she was sharing all wonderful photos of her and Wade doing activities together, smiling, enjoying life, and portraying their relationship as a really happy, healthy, loving one. So online she's wanting everyone to believe that they are a perfect couple, but privately to Reagan she's saying how difficult it is because Wade doesn't care about her in the way that she hoped he would. Now, when Taylor announced her pregnancy to Wade, he was not too thrilled about this because it was all happening so fast. It hadn't been long since she moved in, and now she's pregnant, so he was kind of stunned by this. And I don't think he really said all that much. He was so shocked that he kind of just left the house and went on a hog hunt and never really kind of got excited about the fact of being a dad. So because Taylor wasn't getting that excitement from Wade, she turned to his family because she wanted people to celebrate with her. So she goes to the relatives and tells them about the pregnancy, and she's like, I want to plan a gender reveal party, and hopefully it will help Wade get more excited about what's to come. So she planned a gathering and provided an envelope with the baby's gender in it to one of his relatives, and then that relative was going to tie either a pink or blue bow around the neck of a calf and then walk the calf around the side of the barn, and they'd be outside waiting, and then they would know if they were going to have a baby boy or a baby girl. But when the relative opened the envelope to find out what the gender was, she noticed something unusual. The paperwork was dated to 2016, and this was all happening in the year 2020. So obviously that immediately raised concerns for the relative. So she spoke to Taylor and said, your gender paperwork is dated as 2016. Is this correct? Like, is this your actual documentation? And Taylor's like, oh, that's weird. Let me call the doctor. I'll get right back to you. 30 seconds later, Taylor calls the relative back and says, I've spoken to the doctor. Apparently the lab had been experiencing a printing issue that day, and they printed hundreds of documents with the wrong dates on them. But she insisted it was the real one, it's not a problem, and they're gonna send her out a new one as soon as they can. But that's definitely the real one and the real results for the gender. Now, that's a quick phone call to make. 30 seconds, really. Like, has anyone here managed to get through to their doctors and find out information within 30 seconds? I don't think so, especially during COVID times. I don't think so. So, as you can imagine, the relative is like, she's not buying it. And that's when she really started to question the whole story that Taylor was telling them. And when children and having the hysterectomy, like, they were all friends on Facebook, so they could see this announcement and they were obviously shocked because they know her history and they know this is impossible. So alarm bells are ringing for them, but because of medical law, they're not allowed to just call up Wade's family and say, hey, this isn't true. They're not allowed to do that for patient confidentiality reasons, so there wasn't much they could do. I should also mention that it doesn't seem as if Taylor's 2 children are in her life. You don't see them throughout the whole documentary. They don't move in with Wade, so I don't know what kind of story she's spun about that, but I can only imagine that it's her ex being a monster of some kind and kept her from the children. So Wade's family are becoming increasingly suspicious about Taylor, and they even start contacting the labs and the OBGYN offices that Taylor says she's been going to for her pregnancy checkups, and they weren't allowed to confirm or deny anything, but they did say that the tests Taylor was claiming that she'd undergone and the paperwork she had received weren't in line with how they do things. They didn't send paperwork in the format that Taylor was presenting. So the documents what she was showing to the family didn't match up the way their office operated. So again, another warning sign for the family. And eventually people from Taylor's past, who had mostly stayed out of the situation, started reaching out to Wade's family. They told them plainly that Taylor could not get pregnant because she had undergone a hysterectomy, and they were hoping that someone would try and tell Wade, and people did try, but whenever the subject was brought up, Wade became defensive. So after a while people just stopped pushing the issue because it was clear that he did not want to hear it. Now, I've heard people try and say that Wade was just in it for the money. You know, he thought he was going to be a millionaire soon because of Taylor. Now, I do think that could be part of it, but also I just feel like Wade, as I said earlier, he wouldn't say boo to a goose, right? He was just super chill, didn't like conflict, and he was very trustworthy himself. And I think if you've grown up around people that are trustworthy and lovely, you're not gonna ever expect someone to lie and manipulate in the way that Taylor is doing. So I think he might have been in denial, because sometimes that's just easier than accepting the truth that someone is deceiving you like this. And again, when you have never experienced it, it could be psychologically damaging to let that sink in. So I think he was in denial quite a bit. So when his mum approached him and was trying to suggest that Taylor's not who she says she is and that she's pretending to be pregnant, he was like, what are you on about? You can see she's pregnant, just look at her. And that's because Taylor went on Amazon and bought a silicone belly that she wore underneath her clothing, and she'd also just basically refused to have sex with Wade as soon as she announced she was pregnant, which he didn't like, obviously, but she would say things like, oh, I'm so insecure because I look different, I've got stretch marks, blah de blah. And so he was reluctantly fine, okay. And so he just never saw her naked with this belly, which is very odd. Yeah, I do find that very strange. So maybe he was in it for the money, I don't know, but he didn't really push her. Like I said, he wasn't confrontational, so he didn't push her to do anything she was uncomfortable with. But something that Taylor didn't think grow, right? Like, you're not just pregnant one size for the entire time. But she didn't buy multiple fake bellies, she just wore the same one throughout the entire time. So like I say, at this point, Wade's family are really suspicious of Taylor. And one thing Taylor hated was to not be believed, even though she's lying through her teeth. She hates that people think she's lying. So there was no way she was ever gonna admit that anything was a lie. Even though people were starting to kind of ask questions and things, like she even sent a video of the baby kicking. Now, I don't know how she did that. I guess she's just like flexing her stomach muscles underneath this fake belly or something, but you know, she tried everything she could to persuade everyone that this is real. She booked in a maternity a photo shoot, so she had photos taken of her looking all pretty with her bump. Wade was there in some of them, and yeah, she just doubled down on this lie. And obviously a baby is due now, like it gets to 9 months and like a baby is meant to be coming. So she just extended the lie a bit further because she didn't know what she was going to do at the end of the 9 months. She became so committed to this lie that she hadn't thought about what happens next. So she ended up 10 months pregnant. Naturally, Wade's mum is like, this doesn't happen. You can't go up to 10 months. I'm pretty sure. I've not had children myself, but from what I've heard from people, usually doctors do not like you to go over 2 weeks overdue. So to be 10 months pregnant is wild. And her stomach's not been getting any bigger. It just is all very fishy. But during this time, she'd been spending a lot of her time with her friend Reagan that she met doing her wedding photography. And Reagan was always supportive of her, and she was also pregnant, so they all had this like pregnancy, friendship, bonding time. You know, they talk about morning sickness and just all the different symptoms that you experience with pregnancy. So Reagan's home was like a refuge for Taylor, because when other people were questioning her, Reagan did not. And Taylor complained that nobody believed her and that life in Wade's household was incredibly hard. So, as I said, Reagan's home was like a sanctuary to her at this point, because time is running out, and now even Wade is beginning to ask questions. He's like, why have I never attended a single doctor's appointment with you? That's weird, like, I'm the dad. I should be at the appointments with you. And Taylor said, well, you know, COVID's going on and there's loads of restrictions at the hospitals and the doctor's office, so they just prefer it if I go alone. So she got lucky in a way that that was happening, because otherwise I don't know how she would cover her tracks. But now we're in the 10th month, and even Wade, who's never had children before, knows that this is not normal. So he starts pressing her about, when is this baby coming? Like, we should schedule you for an induction, because this is getting to a dangerous place now. Because he was very busy with work, he said, look, I'm gonna schedule a day off and we will book your induction for that day so that I can come with you and we'll do this thing together and get this baby out of you. It's been far too long. And Taylor had no choice but to go along with that. But then on the morning that she was meant to be induced, obviously she was like, well, I can't go to the hospital. And she wasn't prepared to tell the truth. She woke up early before Wade, crawled out from bed, went under the house and started a fire. Yes, she did. And then she got back into bed, pretended to wake up from sleep, shook Wade awake and said, I can smell smoke, I can smell fire. So Wade jumps up out of bed sees all this smoke coming from underneath the house, he grabs the garden hose and manages to extinguish the fire. So he comes back in and is like, I've dealt with it, and he goes to sleep a bit longer on the couch because it was very early in the morning that this happened. I don't know why he chose to sleep on the couch, but he did. And when he woke up a few hours later, he was like, right, let's go, we're going to the hospital today to get you induced. And Taylor was immediately like, no, wait, we can't go there, we can't go to the hospital, it's closed because there was a bomb threat. And he's like, no, there isn't, come on, let's go, we need to go, get in the car. And she's like, no, wait, it really is closed. So she pulls up Facebook, and sure enough, the hospital said it was closed due to a bomb threat. Which, you guessed it, Taylor had called in herself. After realising that Wade just dealt with the fire quickly and it wasn't going to stop them going anywhere, she called the hospital and said that there was a bomb. Just wild. She was really desperate at this point because she had not any clue what she was going to do. But now she's, thinking, what am I going to do? I can't push this into 11 months of pregnancy. You just can't. There's no way you're getting away with that. So eventually she scheduled another induction at a different hospital because Taylor said she wanted to deliver the baby in Oklahoma, which wasn't really a big deal because they lived near the state line between Texas and Oklahoma, so they did that, they made those plans. And this just kind of goes to show how little Wade knows about pregnancy and the situation that he's dealing with, because when they're booking this second induction, firstly, you don't usually just go to a different hospital and change doctors this late in the game. You've usually got like a regular doctor you're seeing, or at least in the same hospital, right? But she's like, no, we can just change it to this hospital. But not only that, she says on the day of the induction, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna wake up at 3 a.m. and we're gonna deliver those hogs that you've been out hunting first, which is a 4-hour drive away. Then on the way back, we'll stop at the hospital and get the induction. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure, sounds like a plan, that's what we'll do. Which obviously no 10-month pregnant woman, if there is such a thing, is going to suggest that. That's a wild day for a 10-month pregnant lady. But that is the plan that they made. So on the morning of this induction date, they wake up at 3 in the morning and Taylor's like, oh, I'm not feeling good, I feel really sick. And Wade's like, well, you need to come with me, that's the plan, we're going to take you to hospital. And she was like, no, you go on your own, I'm just going to hang back here and I'll meet you at the hospital. So Wade reluctantly is like, fine, I'll go and deliver the hogs and meet you there. So he drives 4 hours away to deliver these hogs to someone who's purchased them. However, when he arrives at the purchaser's home, the man's like looking at him confused, like, what are you doing here? And what are these? And Wade said, I'm here to deliver the hogs you ordered. And he's like, I did not order any hogs. And Wade said, yes you did, I've seen the text messages from you to my girlfriend. And he shows them to him and the man's like, that's not my number. And Wade then asked him, well, have you been dealing with someone over the phone called Taylor? And he said, I did speak to someone called Taylor a few months back, but she was very kind of wishy-washy with getting back to me, so I just stopped communicating with her quite a while ago. So she had sent him on a 4-hour drive for absolutely no reason. She was supposedly helping Wade sell these hogs, and I think she did do it legitimately a few times, but this time she did not. And it turns out that all these other communications, like with the emails and voicemails and messages to lawyers, etc., they were all fake. They were all made up. was no lawyer. There was no bank with her trust fund money. There was nothing. She had made it all up, and on top of that she'd used like a voice changing app so that she could pretend to be a man and leave herself voicemails. She had multiple phones, all just to concoct this lie to trap a man. That's how desperately she needed validation and attention that she would go to these lengths. It's absolutely wild. And Wade would later explain that she'd just like go into the bathroom for hours on end and he didn't know what she was doing in there, and it's like, well, now we know. She was busy on her phone sending herself emails and messages from lawyers and just creating this elaborate web of lies. So now she sent Wade on a 4-hour goose chase. She's dealing with the task of, what am I gonna do about this whole fake baby situation? And that's when it occurs to her, Reagan. Yes, Reagan, who was her friend, who was supportive, who was kind, who was warm and welcoming, who was a safe place for Taylor. Taylor goes to Reagan's house, who's now 34 weeks pregnant. And her husband was away, so it was just Reagan and her 4-year-old daughter in the house. She was in her bedroom, I believe, the daughter. Reagan was in the living room. And Taylor goes in and attacks this poor pregnant lady, and they get into it. Like, Reagan put up a fight, but unfortunately Taylor ended up taking her life and then giving her a C-section and taking the baby out of her. Yeah, a woman that had been nothing but a gem to her, nothing but a beautiful soul. That poor lady, like, I can't imagine what was going through Reagan's mind, like, that someone she thought was her friend was attacking her and trying to take her child. It's just insane. So now Taylor's done this, right? So she's stolen this newborn baby, and she's not a medical expert. She doesn't know what she's doing. She's just got this baby out of this woman's stomach and fled. And that's why baby didn't make it. Baby's premature, wasn't ready to come out. You've not done a good job. And she just took 2 lives for nothing. Absolutely no reason. Like, this was just all a lie anyway. I don't know how she ever thought she was going to get away with this. She's seriously disturbed. And that's when we're back at the scene of the officers pulling her over by the side of the road with this baby on her lap. They've taken her to hospital. The doctor's like, she's not had a baby, she has no trauma to the area. They did blood tests that show that she didn't have any pregnancy hormones in her system. The placenta didn't belong to her. And then there was news of a woman not too far away found murdered in her home, and her baby's gone. So it didn't take long to put 2 and 2 together and realise what Taylor had done. That's what I mean, like, how did she think she was ever gonna get away with this? In every sense, this was an open and shut case. It was so obvious what had happened. And yet, Taylor still kept insisting that it was her baby. And when they're trying to question her, she's like, I don't understand. Like, why are you questioning me? I've done nothing wrong. I've just had a baby. At first, detectives are trying to play that, like, good cop thing. You know, they're like, we know you're not a bad person. Just explain to us what happened. You know, being nicey nice. But she wasn't letting up, and so eventually they started to lose their patience with her, and they were like, look, we are past the point of your storytelling. We already know that this is not your baby. We have medical proof. And we also know that there's a woman that's just been murdered and her baby's gone. We also know that you've had a hysterectomy. So there's no getting out of this. We know exactly what you've done. And yet, astonishingly, she insisted that somehow everything had grown back inside of her. And that she did get pregnant and that this was her baby. I mean, it's just absolutely wild. Apparently, when she had started sharing her pregnancy on Facebook, medical staff and hospitals in the area that knew of her hysterectomy and her medical history were really concerned that she was doing this, that they would put out warnings to nurses and doctors at maternity wards to be vigilant just in case a woman was going to come in and try and steal a baby. But they did not think that she would go to these lengths to go and kill someone that she claimed was a friend. I have no words. She then goes to trial, and again, it's like open and closed case, you know, it's so obvious. And I don't think it took very long for the guilty verdict to come in. And Taylor was sentenced to death because her crimes were so extreme, and she did not show any signs of remorse. She got the death penalty, and apparently she's the 7th woman ever to be placed on death row in Texas. And even since her arrest, she's still not let up or admitted to this lie. She's even attempted to persuade others from her area to come forward with false claims that someone else was seen leaving Reagan's home and that it wasn't her. So she's still trying to be manipulative, even in jail, even after she's been caught. It just goes to show that this is just her. This is her personality. She is, well, she must be a sociopath at the least. A narcissist, a sociopath, maybe a psychopath. And Wade was shocked is an understatement, I think, when he found out none of it was true. Everything she told him was a lie. She was never pregnant, and then that she went and murdered somebody and took their own baby. It was very difficult for him to swallow this information because, you know, up until this, even though he wasn't super excited about becoming a dad, he had like friends at work that were telling him, you know, you should be more excited, you should be happy, step up and be a man, look after that girl, she's a good one, and all this, you know, because they only saw the good side of Taylor. So, you know, they were encouraging him to get excited about being a dad. And then he goes and learns that it was all a lie and that she was a murderer. And like, to look at her, she just looks like your normal country girl. She's bubbly, she's fun, she smiles a lot, she's pretty, she's easy to talk to. So you would just never guess that underneath it all, she just cared about no one and nothing but herself. She was very disturbed. I mean, it blows, as I said many times, it blows my mind. She just did horrific things. For what? For a lie? And clearly she wasn't even a very good mum because she didn't have custody of her other kids. So, yeah, this was a wild documentary. My jaw was on the floor the entire time watching it. But I would highly recommend that you watch it. It's worth it, I think. If you have seen it, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think Wade actually did know that she was lying and he was just hoping to get some money? I anyone's lying to this degree, but if you accuse them and get it wrong, now you've just ruined a relationship with your son because you've accused his girlfriend of an incredible lie. So I guess it's quite a tricky thing to navigate, but do let me know your thoughts on this, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed